Now, there isn't a lot of time for me to be fancy with these recordings, so I'm going to do this really kind of on the fly. This is most specifically about what God has told me 15 plus years ago about leaving the United States, a nation that's going to be destroyed very, very shortly. Specifically, I'll give the date of June 2018. I don't know why that date has stuck in my head all these years. It has never changed. It has never been questioned in my soul, but that is what God has told me. Nevertheless, under my circumstances, I feel obligated by the Holy Spirit to help other Christians prepare to leave the United States, because it is quite apparent that there are a lot of other Christians who are being called to depart the United States. Like me, they might not know why, but can see some of the signs that whether it's going to be through economic collapse or some sort of military destruction, I don't know. But it is 100% clear, as clear as I know that tomorrow morning the sun will rise, that America, unfortunately, is going to be destroyed very quickly and very suddenly and very shockingly to so many people who are going to say, how could this have ever happened to America? And again, this is all just on the fly. I'm just saying this as quickly as I can to put it out there because I feel obligated to help as many Christians who are hearing the calling of God and helping them in getting started in what I've been doing for several years now, preparing my exodus, which I've already pretty much accomplished now, of leaving the United States. The first step is quite simply, where do you go? And again, this is something that the Holy Spirit's going to have to instruct you, because where I'm going is not where God's calling you to go. The environment that I'm trained and familiar with surviving in might be different than the environment you're trained and used to climatizing, surviving in. For me, it might be a tropical location. For you, it might be somewhere up north in the mountains. For one person, it might be in the midst of the people in a city where they can blend in. And up for another, it might be so far into the wilderness that there's no other people. That's something that you're going to have to pray about, do your homework, and I'll try my best to give you some suggestions. But each of these locations have their pros and cons. For me, in a southern tropical climate, it's always going to be warm. That's not going to be an issue for me. What I've looked for is a place that is sustainable by itself. Now, when I say sustainable, it means that I can grow everything I need by myself without so much fear of having somebody else rob it or, too many people to where have to share with too many people. To another person, it might be going up in the, say again, like the mountains, somewhere in, just south of the tundra where you might have the ability to stock up, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food and build a place where, it's so cold underground that you have a natural refrigeration or a way of keeping your food stocks cold. That's one thing you're going to have to consider. Let me pause for a second here to collect what else might, I might be able to assist you with. Okay, well, let's get started with the basics in general. Okay, the first thing you need to do, again, takes time. And if you're just getting started, if you really feel like you hear the calling of God and you know without a question in your heart He's telling you to get your family out of America, and whether you know why or not, our duty is to be obedient to God, not question why. The why we don't have to worry about. When Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt, he didn't need to know that there was going to be a great ocean before them that was going to need the sea parted. He didn't need to know that. He needed to just get the people there and let God act each step along the way. And that's what God will do for you each step along the way. If it seems impossible, God is going to make a way. Don't worry about that, okay? If He's calling you and you know He's calling you to do this, Don't worry about the why or how. Research those things and prepare for them, but in most part, just be diligent and go. The first thing you really have to do is research your options, okay? And I say this, where is really important, because where is going to determine how you're going to get there, how you're going to be able to supply yourself, and what kind of foods are you going to be storing food? Are you going to be purchasing food? Are you going to be growing your own food? Because there's a difference between where I'll be in the tropics, where much everything can be grown year-round, as opposed to in a northern climate where everything needs to be stocked and stored. So the where is the first place that you need to discern where God is calling you to go with your family. And that might be based on a budget. The first thing you need to do is establish an uninterrupted budget of it. And I know everybody makes different amounts of money. You might make $1,000 a month, on a low end income. You might make $1,000 a week or even more. Based on your income, promise yourself and make this a part of your lifestyle, setting aside a certain amount of money every week, even if it's $10. And I say that because that will grow over time. Don't worry about what you have right now, because we only have a few years left, but over those few years, you'll be able to make that amount grow. Financial saving is one of the key important things, because without it, if your destination is somewhere on the other side of the planet and you don't have enough money set aside for that $1,500 plane ticket, or if your destination is somewhere traveling by car, but you don't have enough money for the food stocks that you're going to store, then those are things that you have to be prepared for financially. Because regardless of what God may be calling in your heart, if you're not acting or preparing yourself for this, then when the time comes, if you don't have the resources, you won't be able to do it. So let's get started today and make this your decision today, that you're going to do this. This is going to be a permanent decision in your life. And pray with your family. Talk to your family about it. Don't be afraid to say this, because there are a lot of Christians, and you look on YouTube or on the internet, you'll find a lot of Christians are leaving the United States. Some are going as simply as far as to Central America. Some are going overseas to Europe, the Middle East, some to Africa. A lot of people are going to South America. I don't know too much about that. Myself, I have family roots in Asia. However, that's not my final destination. And I'll keep my final destination secret. Please respect that, because the limited size of the place I'm going to and the limited amount of resources, if you have 10,000 people showing up at the same place, that's going to make things difficult for me. But anyways, get started today, like I said, financially. Whether it's a bank account, whether it's money somewhere in the house, a jar or something that you're going to put money aside for. Start financially today. And let's make this a weekly, and as the weeks go by, you're going to start doing research. You're going to start looking into things such as simple solar-powered generators. You're going to start looking into water, how to make water, how to store food, what types of foods are preservable. Just start doing researches on survivalism. And I know that's a big word, but it's actually something that our ancestors used to do naturally, because they didn't have grocery stores like we had. It was only about 150 years ago where what you harvested in the wintertime or in October, particularly where I grew up in the Midwest, that was what got you through the next 6 months. That was it. Whatever you harvested at that time you were depending on that in your storage to feed your family for the next 6 months. So it's not a conspiracy kind of lifestyle. It's actually a very natural one that we've just simply in the last 100 years forgotten because we became so comfortable to having food always available at grocery stores. And let me say, that's not going to be the case, okay? Because when the financial collapse happens, the majority of our fruits and vegetables, they're imported from out of the U.S. Now, as a merchant marine and a licensed captain, I know how much in diesel fuel alone, let alone the cost of the crew to ship food to the U.S. The U.S. will not have that money to ship their food to the United States, so food is going to become scarce. And I don't mean that to scare you, but that's just a fact from what I understand from commercial industry of merchant marines, is that what we depend on right now being shipped to the United States, we're not going to have money when the financial collapse happens to import those foods. So this is why I'm saying, get started right now. Start looking into foods that have shelf lives of, more than a year. And I'll get more into this later on. But start with what I would say a 3-day backpack. This is what I did, was if there's any kind of emergency, say, a hurricane or, most recently in Ohio, the entire city of Toledo, 500,000 people were without water. And what went off the shelves in a matter of days was gone. There was no more water. People were driving 200-300 miles to find water. That was a very minor incident and very temporary. So since you're just getting started, start with just, say, a 3-day supply. I've began collecting things as simple as ramen noodles, which are very cheap, gallon jugs of water or the 3-gallon jug, and count, say, for yourself or for your family, however many people you need. Say you want to feed them for 3 days, and say you want this food to last for a year. Start looking into things like canned tuna, canned chicken. There are a lot of meats that will last longer than that. And create either in a backpack or say like a plastic container, something that has these foods, and water and everything you need to live for 3 days. And you might even consider testing yourself. Go camping. See if you can actually do this. It's good to practice. From 3 days, once you've gotten that, continue developing that even further from 3 days into, say, 2 weeks. And then stretch 2 weeks into having a month. And again, this is something that you need to do to prepare for when this time happens. However, there might be a circumstance in your life to where, either financial collapse or you lose your job or, whatever happens, you might not be able to buy groceries for, some short time period, like I said, from, some kind of natural disaster. But when that time happens, you will have this stock of food that you've kept aside and replenish it. I always, every year, whatever I had in there, I'll go ahead and take that out, I'll consume it, and then, replace it with new stuff, which is what I'm doing right now. Make that a practice, and it's not that expensive. Every time you go to the grocery store, just buy a few items, and then next week buy a few more items. And next thing you know, by the end of the month, you'll have enough to take care of your family through a short time emergency like that. Let me pause for a second to see what else I can help you with at this time. Okay, next thing I'd like to talk to you about is survival gear or equipment. And again, this is going to depend a lot upon how you're going to travel, where you're going to travel to, and the climate. For example, myself, I have 2 backpacks, one for me and one for my wife. One of the backpacks, and again, these are the big ones, contains all the food and water we have that we need for a quick escape or a couple, a few days getaway. The other one contains the essential tools, and that's the part I want to talk about, is having tools when you travel. That's going to consist of a lot of basic things. And again, do research on the internet on survival equipment. It goes anywhere from having basic hand tools to, if you're going to be traveling by car or truck or something like that, you'll have plenty of space to be able to store, a lot more equipment. But begin with the basics. Like I said, even right now, just start getting a few basic things. That would include an axe, a saw, a hammer, some knives. These things are going to be essential to establishing a shelter. And one thing, when it comes to a shelter, you want to make something. You might start out with something temporary, but in the long run, you're going to want something fixed and permanent. So, consider what you're going to need to establish a permanent shelter. In the northern climates, that might be something as having a log cabin and having some sort of furnace that you're going to have to heat the interior of that cabin. In the southern climates, it might be something a little less solid in that structure, where it might be the use of tropical tents or things like that. But if harsh weather, or I should say when harsh weather arrives, you're going to want something more permanent. So you're going to want to be utilizing the tools required to establish a more permanent structure. So that's the second item. First one I mentioned was preparing foods for a long journey. The second one is tools that you're going to be needing. And again, look these things. Just do a Google search on the internet for survival tools, and there's going to be a lot of fancy things. And again, you'll have to check with your budget what you can afford. And again, just each week, buy something, buy one thing. Buy a box of matches this week. Next week, buy a machete or a hacksaw. And again, just like the food container, put together a kit or something that you're going to store all these things in that you'll be ready to take with you when you make your journey. Another important thing I want to talk about is taking notes. Everything you research, everything that you're checking out online, whether it's your destination, what kind of foods you can bring or harvest, or what type of equipment, how you're going to get there, write all these things down in a note format. Okay, make it kind of maybe like a checklist, or I have several different categories, one for equipment, one for foods, one for transportation, one for types of clothing, and write all these things down, because it's not going to be committed to memory. And the other thing is that once you start writing these things down, you'll have a list of things that from time to time say, okay, I got another paycheck this week. What can I check off of this list? And it might be a bag of rice and a hacksaw or something like that. Or containers, plastic bags, those are always important as well. But everything you research, even if it's things simple as where I might go, say, I might want to go to place A, place B, place C, place D. Write down all those places, write down their locations, and under each location that you're identifying, take some notes. Say, okay, this place has a really thick, mile-long stretch of woods or how would I get there? Write the pros and cons down to everything. And, it's one thing to think these things out, but when you have it down on paper, it helps you a lot more when you look at the big picture. And so that's one of the other things I want to recommend is write everything down, keep notes, and, keep track of what you're doing. And it also gives you kind of like a way to be able to look back at, like I said today, you made your decision today to get your family out of the U.S. because, again, you only have a matter of years left before the collapse happens. So you'll be able to look back when you see this list and say, oh yeah, I got this, and this now. So you can see that you're on your way, and it'll be more reassuring as you see the progression of the notes that you take and how much of it you've established and accumulated. Now, as you're making your timeline, and again, this is something I suggest that everybody does, is establish a specific date. Say when I want to be leaving the United States by this date. Now, the date I've given you is June 2018 is the deadline. I'm going to call that the deadline. If you're not out of the United States by June 2018, everything that for the last 15 years of my life the Holy Spirit has said to me, has told me that I need to be out by that date, no later. Don't be like Lot's wife. Don't wait until the last second. Don't turn around and look. When God tells you to go, you go. Okay? And your date might be sooner than that. You might have the ability to financially prepare something quicker than the other person, or it might be, a little bit later than those who have more money. In any case, look at how much money you have, how much your budget and your financial goal set is, and set a date for yourself. When you set a date for that goal, that encourages you to actually take action and to be able to make steps towards that date, that goal date of yours. And in regards to that date, what I want to say is, hold on a second. Okay, in regards to that date, I want to say that there are two financial aspects of it. First, there is the financial cost of being able to depart, make your departure from the United States. And again, it might be by airplane, it might be by car, it might possibly by boat. If you know a transport that can transport you internationally, you need to figure out how much it would cost to get you to where you have finally decided to be your destination that you're going to relocate to. And you need to consider this relocation as a long-term event. Don't think of it as just somewhere I'm going to stay for say a month or so, because America's not going to come back from this, okay? There is no speaking of America in the last days. It doesn't exist in the last days in the Bible. And I speak this way in the in the wording that I'm saying, projecting future events as if they're going to happen, because they are going to happen. So you need to figure out, first of all, financially, what it's going to take for you to make that journey to the United States. And the second half of your financial budget, which you want to draw a little line between before and after, is what it's going to cost you once you get there. Now, internationally, there may be, there most likely will be visa fees, things like that. There will be cost of, getting perhaps a temporary residence until you get to the final location. And then once you get to your final destination, the cost of establishing that location. Now, it might be anything from building concrete blocks, and again, this is something else that as men, you're going to want to check this out and learn how to do simple things like this, whether, building a log cabin versus building a concrete structure yourself. Let me tell you something. It's physical labor, but it's not that difficult. And this is another thing you could be looking on YouTube, and I've researched all of them, how to build a concrete foundation. It's not as difficult as you think, and this is something else that you want to put into your financial calculator for when you arrive. What are the materials I'm going to need to purchase when I'm there? If it's going to be logs, can you cut down trees? If it's going to be, or buy lumber, or is it going to be purchasing cement blocks? Cement blocks are right now in the U.S. about $2 each. In another country, say one that I'm familiar with, it might be 15 cents. So the country you're traveling to, look at what the cost is over there. You might be amazed how much more affordable it is to, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are leaving the United States, is how affordable it is to live in a different country than the United States. My example, home in the Philippines, like I said, if you take a block of a commercial cylinder block for a house, in the United States it's $2, like I said, at any Home Depot, and in the Philippines, where my wife's from, it's 15 cents. So it's only 10% of the cost. So you can calculate right there the cost of building a $200,000 home in the United States is about $20,000. In a nation like the Philippines or somewhere else where the costs are like that. This is why, researching the costs of food, the cost of materials, construction, and such, look into the country you're traveling to and find out what their costs are. You'll be amazed how if you put aside, say, $100 a week, in 5 weeks you'll have $5,000. $5,000 where I'll be traveling to, I can build a 6-bedroom house by my own hands, of course, and it's going to take time, or with some help with some other family and friends. But when you research the cost of the materials that you're going to be using there, you'll find out that it gives you a good idea of the budget you need to be investing in right now. And again, now at the time that I'm recording this, it only leaves, this is 2014, 2018 is only 4 years away. If that last date that I've been given is 4 years away, that means $100 a month put away is going to be $20,000. That's the minimum, okay? Some of you might be able to afford $250 a week, something like that. It depends on your budget again. And so again, when you're looking at the cost long term, you need to look at the cost of what it's going to take you to get there, and then secondly, you're going to have to look at the cost of what it will take once you are there to build the structure and to establish your foundation there. One of the next things I want to talk to you about is a little bit off the subject of your preparations for leaving the United States. And it has more to do with what you're dealing with today. And specifically, I want to talk about your debt. Okay? I have no doubt, because we're in a debt-driven society, that in America, people are taught that being in debt is a good thing. And now, point blank, you're a slave to your debt now, aren't you? I mean, I can't put it any more simple than that. What to do about your debt is something that every individual should decide for themselves. Now, debt, when you're leaving the United States, is not going to follow you to another country. There is no governing agency that can internationally, say, you move from here to South America or something like that. There's no organization in South America that's going to be calling you up for not paying your debts when you left the United States. And I want you to consider something that I'm going to say that is very, very controversial, and a lot of people don't like it. And it has to do with the fact of not paying your debts. Now, there's a few different laws that aren't really popularly discussed, but when it comes to credit cards, credit is not debt. Let me say that again. Credit is not debt. Credit is credit. The bank gives you credit. When I say I give you credit for this, it means I give you something. I give it to you. And you're in agreement that you will pay it back. But, and I say this with all sincerity and with all research that I have done, there is no law in the United States that requires you to pay back credit cards. I'll let that sink in for a minute. There is no law that requires you to pay back credit. Okay, if you have, say, $16,000 in credit cards, and I'll be honest, I have done this myself personally, because a few years ago when the banks went into foreclosure, or when they got bailed out, I should say, when the banks got bailed out and they used our tax money to bail out the banks, I felt like I was getting robbed, because what the banks were doing was they were turning around using that foreclosure money. And they were using that bailout money to foreclose on the people who paid the taxes to pay the banks. They were taking those people's tax money, kicking them out of their houses because of foreclosure, because of what the banks did. Now, this is the circumstance that I say don't feel bad about not paying your debts, because being in debt is something that we're taught to do, we're told to do, we're encouraged to be in debt in American society by our banks. They always say you need to have good credit, which basically means you need to be in debt. They want you to be in debt. They want you to be a debt slave to them. Now, freeing yourself from slavery, there is nothing wrong with that. Freeing yourself from financial slavery is nothing wrong with that. You see the difference is that what you're doing is, it's not being a bad person by not paying your debt. What you're doing is you're freeing yourself from the old system of debt and making yourself a free individual. And again, what I said about credit cards, and this applies to credit cards specifically, is that I stopped paying my credit cards because I refuse to support an organization that takes the money you give them and uses that money to kick people out of their houses illegally, which is another subject, illegal foreclosures that banks around the country have done. I refuse to be a part of that organization, so I stopped paying my credit cards. I have never been sued. I have never been even challenged by the banks. And the only thing the banks do is they call their insurance agency, the FDIC, said, okay, this guy didn't pay us. The FDIC covers your debt, okay? Don't feel bad. The bank will get their money when you stop paying them. They're insured, okay? That's what their insurance is for, is to pay for debts that aren't paid. When the third-party debt collector calls you, you are under no obligation or contract with a third-party collector. You never signed an agreement with them, so just let them go away. And this is one of the things I want you to consider, is what I'm getting to, my point in regards to debt. Debt is something that a lot of us worry about. I say, well, yeah, I want to do this, but I'm so far in debt. And that's been your life story pretty much. You want to travel around the world. You want to do this. You want to build your house. But you become a slave to this system of debt that purposely keeps you in debt and makes it almost impossible to get out of debt. Quite simply, the way to get out of debt is to stop paying. And I know that sounds a little controversial to a lot of people, and I've gotten a lot of flack for it. But again, you are most concerned about you and your family, okay? And more importantly, is freeing yourself financially so that you can do the things that you need to do, okay? And getting yourself out of debt, one of the quickest ways is to just put an end to your debt and take that money that you've been a slave to, giving it away all the time, use that money for you, okay? I had to do that myself, and it was a tough choice. And it was scary because I didn't know what was going to happen, but you know what? Nothing did happen. Okay, the banks, they called me a few times. And you can research this. Again, this is another thing you do online, is look into debt collectors and questions on YouTube about what if I don't pay my credit cards, things like that. Nothing's going to happen. Honestly, nothing. So that's something for you to consider also. If it's holding you back, you need to be free, okay? Whatever it is that made you a slave, whatever it is that stopped you from being able to make this move. And again, we only have 4 years left. I want you to think about America not existing in 4 years. I want you to think about that, because that's what's going to happen. 2018, there is not going to be an America. Don't let your debt stop you from getting you and your family out of America. And I'm just going to leave it at that and let you consider, meditate on it, and pray about that as well. Now, another thing I want to discuss in regards to your research, it's about what we call doomsday people. Okay? There's a realistic side to this, and then there's a little bit of a fictitious, overblown, there's a lot of false information out there as well, okay? There are a lot of videos that I've followed for years and years and years and years saying, oh, America's going to end in 2010, it's going to end in 2012, it's going to end in 2013. It goes on and on. There are a lot of false accounts out there. I say 2018 because that's what God told me, okay? I'm not saying that because I don't want any popularity from this. I honestly wasn't even intending to make this recording. I feel compelled by the Holy Spirit to do so. And whoever listens to it, if it helps one or two other families get out of the U.S. before this collapse happens, whenever it is, that's great. That's the purpose then that God fulfilled for this. However, there are a lot of people out there who will make, there are a lot of false information out there about get out of the United States in 6 months, or America's going to collapse in December. Use discernment. That's my word. Okay, even with listening to this audio cast itself, God gave you the gift of discernment. Use that. Because what information God may be speaking to you might be different than someone else. And more specifically, there are a lot of people out there who are, as I say, false prophets or doomsday false prophets. And they might have good intentions, but their information may be false. So as you're doing your research, use discernment with everything that you listen to, take into consideration, and pray. Ask God, show me the truth in all of this. Because you'll find out that, there are a lot of videos out there and a lot of helpful information that get you all excited. There are some people who actually make a living preaching this information, and that's basically what their intent was. It wasn't a matter of truth. It was a matter of they wanted to make money off of you. But God is going to give you your own calling. He's going to give you your own ability, date, when to leave, where to go. Every individual that God is calling, He's going to call you to your own exodus. Pray about that, because where God's calling me to exit to is a place that He's been preparing me all my life, which is somewhere more tropical. God may be preparing you to go somewhere more of a colder region, and you may have spent your whole life preparing for that kind of environment in that location. Pray about it. All the information that you receive, pray about it, discern it, and sort the facts from the fiction, even with my own words here. And again, because what God is telling me, I'm just saying these things to help you the best that I can. But there may be some things that God may be telling you that I may not know of, or maybe different than, again, what I'm preparing for. So use discernment in everything as you study and prepare. And be diligent. Don't hesitate. Don't say, I'll wait till next year, because 4 years is all we have. You have 4 years to get your family out of the U.S. Because if you're not out of the U.S. by June 2018, survival is going to be very difficult. Very difficult. It's going to be very bloody. People who would never think about killing other people for food. When it comes time to your family starving and the guy next door having food, believe me, there are going to be a lot of people who would right now say, I would never kill somebody to feed my family, who will be doing just that. So let's remember that this is for the best interest of your life and for your family's life, is to be diligent and make this a priority, because we only have 4 years left to do this. And most of all, as I said, use discernment with everything that you research, everything I say, and everything that comes across on the internet or wherever you research. With discernment, there's one other thing that I want to discuss, and that's using precaution, discussing your plans with other people. Now, I'm not saying specifically be secret about it, okay? And let me use a few examples. If you were to say that, I'm planning to do this, I'm leaving the United States, I'm taking my friends, my family, this is where we're going to go, we're going to have this much food, there's a chance, and it's very likely, say when you get to the destination you're going to, that there may be other people who don't have what you have. And there are going to be people who were foolish. The fools are going to try and take advantage of those who were prepared. Noah built the ark, and in all his time, they laughed at him. They told him he was crazy. When the rains came and the floods came, people were all of a sudden knocking on the door. They wanted on board the ark. This is what's going to happen in America. As you've spent these last few years preparing, people in the last days are going to say, I need your help. I overheard that you were preparing to leave the United States. I heard you have money. I heard you have food. I need your help. It's going to be tough to say no. No question about it. There are going to be people who might rob you if they find out that you have all these resources. There may be people who might even threaten to kill you if it comes down to that date. If you've waited until the last minute to make the exodus and the chaos begins, it's going to be very dangerous for you. But with that is why I strongly stress is explain to your family the importance of this. But Keep it just within your family. Okay, this is something you have to explain to them. This is why I'm doing this. It's because I want to preserve our life, and it's quite obvious that America is never going to get out of an $18 trillion debt, and sooner or later, that debt is going to come crashing down on us. And the handouts that America's been getting, the loans that Americans we've been living off of loans from other countries for the last almost decade at least, okay? That's what's sustaining us. That's why Americans are going to McDonald's right now. It's just because the other nations have held us up. There's going to come a day when that ceases to exist. And when everything collapses, you want to discreetly, if you haven't already, and I encourage you to make this again before the date of June 2018, you want it to be something discreet to where when you exit, it will be, I don't know how to say, I don't want to say sudden, but rather without notice. You're going to plan for this date, but you're not going to say, hey, everybody, I'm going to be quitting my job in 2-3 years. Don't talk about it, okay? Go on about life as if with your company, yes, I have plans to do this and expand and get promoted. Continue life as if you're not doing this. Keep this secret for the safety of your own family, and so that if things come down faster than you expect them to, you'll be able to make that exodus without anyone trying to latch on or banging on the ark as the flood waters come. That's just one other thing I wanted to add as a side note. Some of the advanced materials that I suggest you look into, aside from preparing food, learning how to construct a shelter, learning how to construct a permanent structure, or maybe it might be something along the lines of a recreational vehicle or something. I don't know what your plans are, but a few things that I have made a definite must on my list. Number one, solar power. For example, right now I have a backpack that has a solar charger on it. It's only about $100. That solar charger, whenever I want to go hiking, I want to go out into the woods, that solar charger charges a battery. That battery keeps my phone constantly charged. I can leave the electrical grid permanently. I can leave the electrical grid and always have a full charge of electricity. I do this because when I do go traveling, my wife always wants me to be in touch. She doesn't want to worry about me not being able to communicate with her. That's a temporary example why I do that. Now, that's just for a device like the phone, which the important thing about this is that along with the survival side of it, you're not just going to need to survive, you're going to need to live. So this little charger I have for my phone, it provides music for me. It gets my mind off of the mundane. It gives me entertainment. And further from that, there are larger chargers. When you're thinking about building a permanent structure, you're gonna want to eventually invest in some form and some size of DC voltage battery with solar charging capability for lights, for the basic uses. And this is something else you want to research. Look at people who are already building solar power for their houses, for their what they call their bug-out shelters, whatever they might call them. The second thing is water filtration. I'm still trying to come up with an answer for this myself, but start looking into it, because what water you carry with you is going to last only so long. And then eventually, if you're going to be there permanently, you're going to need to figure out how are you going to continue to get fresh water for your family. And you'd be amazed how much water you need day to day. So those are two things that I strongly suggest you add to your long-term list of things to acquire, is a solar electrical charging system and then a fresh water making system. And if I get any more information on either of those two things, I'll make suggestions myself. But as of this time, I'm still kind of researching. There are products out there. One product that a friend of mine has actually makes from the humidity in the air. It takes a dehumidifier, takes that dehumidified water, runs it through a filter, and makes it drinking water. Now, the problem with that is that it requires electrical current, AC voltage to work. So we're getting there as far as technology goes, and I'm still trying to figure out where the best places and the best ways of procuring fresh water may be. But those are two things you're going to want to add to your I'm starting to get a little tongue-tied here, your long-term survival needs is going to be a source of battery-powered electricity and a way of making your own water. Tell you what I'm going to do, because this has already been 45 minutes. Didn't realize it was going to be that long of a time already, and just in 45 minutes I've just barely begun to scratch the surface of what I want to help you with. But I'm going to continue to record more, but I'm going to go ahead and make this the first of, I guess, several series of recordings, and one by one I'll have my friends put them on the internet for me, and so they can be of use for you. And I'll add more information in future recordings. But if this is on YouTube, go ahead and bookmark this, share it. When you share videos, helpful videos, it brings more people to be attracted to the videos, and it'll help more and more people to prepare their exodus. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this first recording, and I'm going to say again that be ready to make this decision. If you've been listening to this through 45 minutes and you say, well, I'm still not too sure, just keep researching. Again, I'm not trying to twist anybody's arm and say, listen to me. What I'm saying is listen to God. Okay? As for myself and many other Christians, the information I've been giving to you, I wrote in a journal, and I have 2 or 3 spiritual journals that I've wrote all the way from almost 20 years ago that said that I was not going to be living in the United States. My children were not going to be raised in the United States in the years to come. And now, looking back over 15 years, back then I couldn't understand why God was telling me I was going to leave the United States. Now I can see why. And this is for the best interest of my family. This is for the best interest of your family, because America is no longer a Christian nation. I'm going to be blunt about that. It's quite obvious that there are organizations that hate Christianity. They want religion removed from America. You've seen this. You've seen the Bible taken out of schools. Now prayer is banned in schools. Now they've taken 10 Commandments out. It goes on, and it's going to continue. Okay, this attack on your religious rights is going to continue. And I hate to say this, but Americans have done nothing to fight it. In the colonial days, when King Britain, and I'm going to compare our modern government to King Britain because it's no different, King George created all these taxes and all these unnecessary laws for American citizens. In the colonial days, they took to arms. They gave their lives, and they said, I would rather die than live in a nation where the freedoms we once had are no longer existent. Unfortunately, in America, for whatever reason, we don't have that spirit anymore. Christians, as much as they love God, they've become complacent. And please forgive me if this sounds a little bit insulting, but I'm just stating the facts. Christians have not fought hard enough. They haven't used enough resources, enough enthusiasm to get up and do something about it. And we've seen this happen all throughout history, where I'm going to, again, be blunt and just state that America is falling the same way that Germany fell to Hitler's Nazism. It started out with removing religion. It started out with removing rights to defend yourself with weapons. It started out with proclaiming health benefits and all these things that was going to make Germany a great nation. America is going step by step down that road. And this is the reason why I'm saying this is not just for you to listen to me, but I want you to do research about where America is going. and use the discernment that I mentioned earlier and pray about it. And then if you still believe, again, I'm sure you're considering it right now, about maybe I should get my family out of the United States, but I'm so tied up in my job, I'm so tied up in my finances, I'm so tied up in the bills that I owe, I can't do it. Don't ever say you can't do it. You are a free person. You're free from your debt. You're free from your job. And the only person that makes you free is yourself when you take off those chains. So at the end of this video, if you're still listening to the end of this, I want you to pray about that. And pray about how willing are you to free yourself from the chains that you're currently wearing. And if you're prepared to leave the United States, as I have said, by June 2018, that's the date that God has given me. And for 20 years now, there hasn't been even an inkling of questioning that date. It's solid in my heart. As I know the sun will rise tomorrow, I know that in June 2018, America will cease. And I want you, after listening to all this, to pray about it, do some research, and consider if you're ready to join the exodus that is growing and growing. This isn't the first time Christians have made an exodus from a nation. And from this point on, I'll let you pray about it, and then I will continue this on an additional recording. And God bless you. I will talk to you soon.